Good morning. My name's Sean Galloway. I'm here with Mr. Pete Bollis for the Carroll County Remembers History Project. Mr. Bollis has been nice enough to share some of his memories of Carroll County today on October 7th, 2009. How are you today, Mr. Bollis?
Really fine, and I want to thank you for inviting me to do this. I appreciate it very, very much.
Oh, no problem, no problem. So I guess we could start at the beginning. What are some of your earliest memories of Carroll County? Were you born here?
Well, let me say I was a child in Mount Airy. My mother and father, my father came to Mount Airy in 1929. My mom was born in Westminster, and her family grew up in Westminster, and she was a child in Westminster, went to Western Maryland College, and married my father. They settled down here in Mount Airy and raised my sister and myself. I went to Mount Airy Elementary School, Mount Airy Middle School, and to the senior high school. I think I was thinking about this and some of the things that I had as a child, and it was great being a child here in Mount Airy. We lived on Main Street, right across from what is now the elementary school, and I just had a great time growing up. I was fortunate enough to be able to walk to the school, so that was kind of neat. I think one of my earliest fondest memories of being here is all the people that knew me in the neighborhood, I should say. Everybody knew me, and I was close to all those folks. They were either my aunts or my uncles or whatever, and they watched out for me, and I think that was really awesome, especially in today's environment where a lot of people don't know their own neighbors. So being here in Mount Airy was great for my childhood. I know my sister and I, we are just products of our environment, and being here was great.
Take me back. Give me an average day in Mount Airy living on Main Street for you.
Well, probably some of the earliest recollections that I have is I can remember one time in the 4th grade, I was in the elementary school, and my sister was still not in school at that time, and I sat beside the window, and I used to watch the other children ride their bicycles on the street and play, and I could see those children. And the teacher came over and said, "Pete, you got to pay more attention. I'm going to have to move you from these windows." But it was great. It really was. I think I was reflecting upon this, and one thing that I remember as a child here in Mount Airy, as you know, the train came into Mount Airy, and goods and services were unloaded downtown Mount Airy at the train yard. And as you're at the train station and you're looking west, the coal cars used to come and dump the coal in these long chutes. And I can remember as a child standing there and watching that coal car dump the coal. And one day I decided it'd be really great to slide down this long slide of coal. I did that a couple of times, and it was awesome. Had a great time.
I bet you were pretty dirty.
Well, let me say this. I only did that one time because when I got home, my mother said to me, "What happened to you?" And I said, "Mom, you know, I found the greatest thing to do. I'm sliding down this coal bin." And she said, very sternly, "I think we won't be doing that anymore." So it was really good. As a child here, I think some of the same issues today, there wasn't a lot to do, but us kids at that time, we found things to do. We played ball up on the school grounds in the spring and in the fall. In high school, we did the soccer. There was no football team. We did basketball, and we did baseball. So I had a great childhood here. I can't say enough. And I get to see a lot of the older folks, and I am one of those older folks now that I grew up with. So every day here in Mount Airy, I relive my childhood.
Now you mentioned that you moved away. You're living back in the area now?
Yes. My wife grew up here in Mount Airy too. She was employed at the Goddard Space Flight Center down in Greenbelt, and we moved away. We lived in Prince George's County for 30 years. And in 2001, we had been talking about moving, where to go, where to come to, and we decided to move back here to Mount Airy. So on Valentine's Day in 2001, we moved back. And we actually live down in Nottingham now on a farm that my father owned in 1939. And like I said, we're seeing all these folks that I grew up with as a child who are now older, livelier seniors. and it's just awesome.
Okay.
It's just awesome.
Is your farm active?
No, the farm that my father had is now a housing development. But then again, in Carroll County, a lot of farms are housing developments.
I'm gonna just clip that on back up there. Okay. So you were saying it's a housing development?
It's a housing development now.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So do you ever reminisce about what used to be where in this housing development when you drive through to get to your house? Do you remember where everything was?
Well, I'll tell you this story. It's really strange because our housing development is down off of Watersville Road, and I ride up Watersville Road, and every time I ride up Watersville Road, I remember as a kid, we used to go to Watersville Road to sled down in the winter. We'd slide down there, and Mr. Roy Nell had a farm down there and still has Nell's Farm Market. His son and grandson do. He would always come to the end of the lane and have us kids get behind his car, and he would drive us back up the hill. So now when I leave my house every day, I don't go the bypass around Mount Airy. I ride through town, because every time I do that, I try to reminisce about something that happened to me as a child or a young adult here in the town, to see where the Tablers used to live, and Mrs. Leatherwood, who lived next door to me, and the Conaways. I just remember those folks, and it's just good. I ride down Prospect Road, and I remember the area down there as a child and how it's all changed. And it has changed. Some of the changes, I believe, are really good. Some of the changes, I'm sorry to see some of the older buildings go, but that's kind of progress, I believe.
How was it like for you in high school? You mentioned you went to high school in the area,
yes.
too. How was that experience?
It was really a good experience for me. I got to have some of the greatest teachers in the world. I was thinking about this lady today. This is Dorothy Etzler, who was my music teacher. She did the music class, and one thing she always did was she had people that were kind of disruptive, you might say, come and sit on the bench with her. And I always made sure that I was kind of disruptive, because I always liked to hear her play God Bless America on the piano. And I would always ask, play a patriotic song or God Bless America, and she would always do that. But I had a great high school years. As a matter of fact, I graduated in 1960 from Mount Airy High School, and this year will be our 50th anniversary coming up, and it's going to be awesome to see some of the folks that I haven't seen in a long time.
Yeah, well,
so I had a really nice time.
Okay. Let's see. Now, going back to your younger childhood, when your father did own the farm, did you have any chores to do there, or? Actually,
I wasn't born when my father owned that farm in
really?
1939. I appreciate you saying that. But no, he had sold that farm. I guess it was at the end of 1939 he sold that farm. He decided, he published the paper, or he wrote the paper here in Mount Airy, the Community Reporter, from 1929 until about 1958. But in 1937 he decided that he wanted to go to law school and be an attorney. And he was the only attorney here in Mount Airy for quite some time. He was affectionately known as the Judge, and we got to see him in that mode, because his office was downtown in a building that's now gone, the People's Lumber and Supply building.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so he kind of like had a change in careers.
I would say that he was a child of the Depression. He was a child of the Depression, and when he came to Mount Airy, he worked for his uncle, and he was paid, if I remember correctly, $7 a week to do the paper in 1929, which in 29 was a lot of money, $7 coming out of and during the Depression. And he did that job, but he just kind of had enough of that and decided that he could do better, and went on. And it was nice. Some of the people that I see now who are, and we're at the Mount Airy Senior Center, some of the people that I see here remember my father, and they had dealings with him, and it's kind of nice to reminisce with that. I think one thing that I do need to share with you is that the children that I remember here in Mount Airy, there were a lot of good times. Because, you know, it's more simple than it is now, simpler times. Times were hard, but it was also good times for all of us that grew up during that time in the late 50s, early 60s. And it's just, I find it to be very rewarding to hear people talk about my parents or people that I know that are deceased. And with the Mount Airy Historical Society, we do the newsletters and have the museum, the Hall of Fame, etc. And you asked me if I relive my childhood basically every day.
Okay.
Every day. I can remember coming here to Wildwood Park as a child when the carnival was here, the Fireman's Carnival, the Lions Carnival. And when I come here, I relive that. I can see the Ferris wheel. I can see the shows that they did here, Patsy Cline, Jimmy Dean, etc. And every day I relive my childhood. I mean, what more could you ask?
Right, exactly. Now you mentioned your wife worked for Goddard. What did you do?
I'm a Goodyear retiree, the Goodyear Tire and Rubber Company. I worked for the Goodyear Tire and Rubber Company for 33 years, and I'm a Goodyear retiree. Yes. Okay.
Now, when your years in work, were you somehow inspired by watching your father growing up? Did he put some kind of work ethic into you, I should say?
Well, you know, he is my hero. My mom and dad, they're our heroes. I know those folks had a hard time in and during the Depression and coming out, and they are our heroes. I would say this, my dad had a real good work ethic. My mom did too. My mom was a teacher in the Carroll County schools for a while. I think the thing about that was that we learned that, and we learned the value of a dollar. We learned how to take care of ourselves. We learned the basic fundamentals. And yes, the answer to that question is yes.
Okay. Give me a funny story, something that you and your sister may have used to joke about back when you were growing up.
Let us think. A funny story. I will tell you, this is kind of a realistic story. And my sister was always known as Jenny. And that was because when she was a small child, we had a wren who built a nest in this bird box, and I called her Jenny Wren. And I was always known as Pete. Everybody that knows me calls me Pete. And unfortunately, we had to have our mom, she was in an assisted living home. And one time I went to the assisted living home, and a lady came out who was an administrator and said, "Pete, I see your sister Jenny, but I never see your brother and sister, James and Helen." Now that's our names, James and Helen. And I looked at her and I said, "Huh? Like this?" And she said, "Yes, I was wondering where your other brother and sister are. We never see them." And I said, "We are James and Helen." And I told my sister that, and I think about that quite often.
Right.
and I guess that's one story. We were adults when that actually happened to us. It's I think a lot of good things that happened there. You know, we were blessed. We were blessed to be here, and I think there's many of those. The church that we went to St. Michael's. We did all the things that the kids did there, like I said before. So I guess we just had a great life. We really, truly did.
Okay. I kind of want to wrap up. Give me, if there was one message or one sentence to explain how wonderful of a time you've had here in Mount Airy, what would that message or sentence be?
I think that that one sentence would be I believe that having been in a bigger city, grew up in a small town, moved to a bigger city, and then moved back, I think everyone needs to live in a small town at one time. I think they really do. And I think the message is, in my particular case, would be all those folks that I grew up with, that were my aunts and uncles, had a profound impression upon me, and I'm very appreciative.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Ballas, for spending your time with us, and you've been a great guest, and we really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Take care.
All right. Thank you.